Hi, there's been a program on the media about tenants on benefits, and I wanted to set the record straight, really, because there's always a great imbalance on the media, which is always portraying the poor or those on benefit as being those that are very vulnerable. But the issue is that landlords too are not always rich. They're not always millionaires. They're just ordinary people trying to um, either better themselves or working hard and maybe only have one property. Um, they haven't got millions in the bank, but they've chosen to try and improve their situation for later on in life. Now, it's the case that whether it's tenants on benefit or even supposedly more well-to-do tenants, they all can be very deceptive and try and get into a property and then sometimes wreck it. Now, I've been involved in the letting and management industry for a few years. I'm not in it now. I've also been a nurse in the past. Um, and I've come across issues where somebody has forged their references, and then they somehow have got through that process and gone into a property, and then they brought a friend in, and then they've at the main door somehow blocked the automatic locking mechanism so that their friend can come and go, which compromises the whole of the building. So that is one issue. And then there is another issue of where somebody who was quite well to do said he had a lot of money, was coming over from France, and his money hadn't arrived yet, and he was allowed in. This was many years ago, before even letting was really commonplace in Britain. You know, there was hardly any lettings at that time, only one agent doing it. And he was, he was a con man basically, and somehow he got into that property, and the money never arrived, and it took about 8 months or more, I think, to actually get him out, and he didn't pay a penny. When you have people come to view a property or want to look at the property, they phone up and they say they're working in a coffee shop, or not working at all, or they're an author, or they're running their own business. Um, and, all of these things may sound great, but when it actually comes to the references, they're not going to be able to provide anything that is going to be suitable for a property that they might be looking at, which might be, £200 or £300 a week, and yet they are not in full-time permanent work. And this is very uncertain for a landlord. They need to know that their rent is going to be coming in, because they also have bills to pay. And some may have savings, but if you suddenly find that your tenant turns around and says, "Oh, I can't afford to pay the rent anymore. I can only afford to pay half of it, or maybe not any of it," um, then then you have to either wait to see if they finally can afford it, or you have to take them to court, which takes several months, and then you go to court, and then the judge may give them another few months, or it takes, I think, on average about 6 to 9 months to get a tenant out of a property. And in the meantime, a landlord has costs and expenses and mortgage to pay, and that could bankrupt him, and he loses his savings he's put in the house and the house itself. Um, so it's we can't be blasé with the landlords, and the tenant agents can't be blasé with the landlords' investment, because if they put a tenant in there that's on benefit and that then decides not to pay, then suppose the agent can be taken to court because they've been negligent, for instance. And then we have the issue where tenants that are on benefits, obviously not all of them, but you hear some horrific stories where they strip they may behave very badly, and then they strip the the property of everything that's worth anything, or they leave it in a wreck. If you have tenants with children or with pets, um, that can wreck a property. One property I knew, somebody left it and it was left empty and nobody said anything. And when the agent went there, it was full of fleas. So that had to be dealt with. Another issue, there was reports of difficulties at one particular flat, and it was found that there was a brothel being run from there. So that's another issue. And all, people put up a very nice front. Everybody's very nice at the beginning, but once you give somebody the keys to a property, as they say, occupation is 90% of possession. And this is very true, because even if you've got tenants that are on benefit and they've genuinely lost their job, that they did have a job, for instance, that they could afford it, um, and now suddenly they can't, the council will say, well, wait until you go through the process where you're evicted. Now, it takes some months, as I said, for a process of eviction to take place, 6 to 9 months in all, because the judge can be compassionate or not, and they tend to be more compassionate for the tenants, forgetting that the landlords are also stand to lose something, and are not bad people necessarily. The tenants are not bad people necessarily, but the issue is that the system of the law, if you supports those that are homeless, because the council hasn't got homes to house people, so they want to keep tenants that can't afford a property in a property as long as possible. So they will stay until you get evicted. So ignoring all the difficulties that a landlord might have, and then you finally get your property back, and the landlord may be bankrupt by that time because they haven't had any rent at all. So, and then you obviously get the people that are just very difficult and don't care for a property. They may have loud parties, or they have people come to stay that shouldn't be there. I live in a council building myself now because I have had ill health. And the behaviour of some of the tenants and residents here, absolutely appalling. And when you say that there are no second-class citizens, then I would actually disagree with that. And you can be a second-class citizen even though you're rich and well educated, because I have people here that they have dogs. They're not meant to have dogs here. They wreck the gardens. They don't pick their mess up. They make a mess outside my door, which is like an open corridor. Nobody picks it up. It's 3 feet from my door, and I have to pick it up. And this happens frequently. I complain about it. I try and put suggestions for it, but I was with the TMO. Whether it's changed now or not, I don't know. I'm about to write to them again. But we can, and I've had difficulties with neighbours from noise and that sort of thing, and it all doesn't work. The systems don't work. So even if you are very kind and put somebody who's on benefit in there, the law is not going to save the landlord if that tenant becomes difficult. Because I've been through the courts as well, not in assistance with somebody else with regard to an agent that was really behaved very badly on behalf of the landlord that I knew, and the courts let contempt of court go through, let lies go through, and 5 court cases occurred because the judges and the law didn't uphold the law. So, I would say to any landlord or agent, one has to be, and to the society at large, it's all very well having people that are vulnerable, yes, have children, working hard and this sort of thing, but the landlords are also working hard a lot of the time. And then, people say that they're poor, but they've got 2 or 3 dogs. It costs a lot of money to feed a dog. So there has to be responsibility on both sides, from the landlord's point of view and also from the tenants. And they have to see that just because they need a flat and they're term vulnerable doesn't mean to say that the world is going to stop for them, because ultimately, um, we make our decisions, and as they say, we make our bed, we lie on it, and we have to make the best we can. So think of another alternative. Go to a different area, a cheaper area of the UK, where you can get a cheaper rent and change your job. Um, and even if you've got a business, as I say, there are lots of people that say they have a business, but a business can have a little bit of money, a lot of money, and then suddenly have no money. So again, that's also a very difficult situation for any landlord to take on, because there's no certainty. Now, there may not be certainty if somebody's in full-time permanent work, but at least they've got to put somebody has accepted them as somebody who's responsible, able to do work. They maybe have a skill, and that's what agents should be looking for their landlords if they're a good agent. So, what everybody is asking the agents to do is to be irresponsible with the properties that they're managing for, and that isn't right either. So it's like many things in life, it's all rather a mess, really. That we've got to start thinking for ourselves, and realise that some things we can't afford, and when certain things happen, we've got to take responsibility for that, and go forward anyway, but in a different direction, but still not expecting others to take responsibility, but we take responsibility.